Right. Want to make sure you all have your props that we were talking about. Just sit in a nice, comfortable seated position. Today's class, I'm going to do an Earth Day theme because Earth Day is later on this week. But in the same token, I was looking carefully in terms of some of scripture, and this is a combination of things. I was going into Genesis, of course, and then later on in Exodus. So tell you what, just get in a nice, comfortable seated position. I know a lot of you've been coming for more than a year, virtually in a year, but more than that. So just get a nice, comfortable seated position and just connect to your own breath. If you like, you can close your eyes. And while you're doing that, I'm going to share a couple things in regards to Genesis, and that's going to help you understand the sequences and the asanas and stuff like that we're going to be doing today for my Earth Day theme. So you can close your eyes if you like, but one of the things I always like to remind people is check to see where your sits bone is, make sure it's connected to something like the earth, of course, or I'm actually sitting on a small little pillow. Check where your knees are. Is it comfortable? If you want, you can roll your shoulders, get the shoulder blades down and back, and then place your hands gently on top of your thighs. Feel your collarbone, your chest nice and expansive. And then and if you like, you can close your eyes, but you don't have to. And then just connect with the breath. So you can do your inhalation through your nose. You can feel your belly rise. As you exhale, it can just go gently back toward its spine. So continue doing that and set your own intention as I share a couple things in regards to Genesis. Now, of course, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And on the first day, God said, "Let there be light." So we had light. And then on the second day, let there be an expanse, something that separates the water from under and the water from the expanse over, which they called sky. And then on day 3, let waters under the sky be gathered together, called land. And then they gathered together the water, and that was called sea. And then the land produced vegetation, so seed-bearing plants and trees that bear fruit were produced on day 3. And then on the 4th day, let there be lights in the expanse of the sky that would actually allow to separate the day from the night, allow us to mark the seasons and days and years. So we now have from God the sun, moon, and stars. And then on day 5, God said, let water teem with living creatures, that birds fly above across the skies. So then we had birds and the sea animals. And then on day 6, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to its kind. We now had livestock and creatures that moved along the ground and wild animals. But then God said, let us make man in our image, into our likeness. So God created man in his own image. And in the image of God, he created him, male and female. So on day 6, land, animals, and humans were created. And thus the heavens and the earth were completed. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. God blessed the 7th day and made it holy. So as we today celebrate Earth Day in our yoga practice, I'd like for you to take this time to feel yourself connected to Earth. But more importantly, feel yourself connected to God. God not only did they create you, man, all the things, everything that we live in on Earth, all the animals, the plants, sky, the light, all of it he created with us in mind. You open up your eyes if they were closed. We're going to inhale our arms up toward the sky. Imagine yourself reaching up toward the sky, the expanse. Reach up high, maybe your left palm up, and exhale your right arm down. If you can touch the floor, touch the earth, that's great. If not, you may want to place a block or something down there. Feel that there. Feel the separation between the two. And as you exhale, bend your right elbow slightly as you lean over. So a nice little lateral stretch. Again, keep your left sit bones still grounded onto earth. So one of the things I mentioned is let's feel ourselves rooted and grounded toward earth. Even though we are creatures or likeness of God that don't really belong on earth, we are here. Inhale back to center. Inhale your right arm up. Exhale your left hand down. Again, if you have a block, if you want to, you can bring it over to the left side. You don't need to, especially once you bend. I want you to feel yourself pressing upward. Feel even along that lateral side, the rib cage, everything expand upward. Right sits bones still connected to earth and come over toward your left side. Nice little breath. Remember, go to your own range of motion. Breathe in the area. If it's okay with you, you can always bring your gaze upward. You don't need to. This is your own practice. Breathe here. Inhale back up. Inhale your left arm up. Exhale your right and left hand back down. Now think of the water. So just do a flow, so a little bit side twist. Slight little range of motion. Gently spinal twist, but nice and gentle. Giving a little bit of spinal twist. If you want, you can even rotate your wrist a little bit so feel it flowing. And then we're going to get gently onto our hands and knees. So just make sure if you do have blocks, have it kind of nearby. If you like to use it when we do some of our sun salutation. We're going to get into our tabletop. The knees directly underneath your hips, hip width apart. Wrist directly underneath your shoulder width apart. And we're just going to do cat-cow. So think about the livestock and everything. So cat-cow, so inhale as you drop your belly down. Tailbone slightly up, gaze slightly up, but just slightly. Go to your own range of motion. And exhale as you go into cat. Inhale to cow. Exhale to cat. And then do this for at least 3 more breath cycles to your own rhythm. And you can go to your own range of motion. And then once you're already there, we're going to go nice and even. Now, still connected here. Keep your left knee on the ground. Extend your right leg back. Keep your right hip and left hip even. You can always place your big right toe onto the floor. If you like, you can extend your left arm straight forward into our songbird. Again, be grounded into your left leg, your left knee, your left foot, and then your right hand. Feel your right foot extended behind you, your left arm extended in front of you. Exhale, both down. Do you want to? You can kind of sway a little bit. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So now exactly, we're going to extend your left leg back. Feeling yourself nice and rooted down with your right leg. Left hand is nice and grounded. And then extend your right arm if you like. These are just options. You always have the choice to place your left big toe onto the floor. Keep breathing. Gaze is still down on the mat. And when you're ready, drop that right hand down, left knee down, and then just draw some circles. So just rotate. And go in the opposite direction. So maybe this will be our little joke about like, yeah, even the moon kind of rotates and revolves. So we're kind of doing that. All right, so let's go into our downward facing dog. So even though your hands are directly underneath your shoulders, you might want to choose to walk it up just one handprint above, away from you, both hands. Now tuck your toes and slowly lift your knees up off the ground and slowly lift your hips up off the ground, but feel your feet and your hands nice and rooted into the ground, into the earth. As we start straightening our knees into our first downward facing dog of the day, possibly, if this is your first yoga practice. And then you may want to walk your dog by bending your right knee, extending your left heel toward the floor, and then vice versa, bending your left knee, extending your right heel toward the floor. So just alternate between the two. It does not actually have to touch the earth. And if you'd like, you can have it still and feel if you can still feel the expanse of your breath coming through, a nice connection to the earth with your feet and your hands. Beautiful. Let's slowly walk our feet up toward our hand, going to a forward fold. We're just going to do, one full sun salutation. We're going to go into forward fold. Grab your opposite elbows and just allow the gravity of the earth to pull you down. Feel your feet still nicely rooted into the ground. You're going to release your hands down and then engage your core and slowly start bringing yourself up, one vertebrae at a time. So that we're now in our standing mountain pose of what we expect on earth. We're going to inhale our arms all the way up. If you like, slight little back bend. Inhale back to center. Exhale, forward fold. Bend exactly at your hip, all the way down to the floor. Inhale your hands toward your shin just to get a nice flat back. Make sure you're truly flat back. Exhale, back to forward fold and take a step back with your right foot. You're more than welcome to use a block if you like. Check your left knees over that left ankle. Feeling even your right hip flexors starting to straighten, get a nice little stretch there. Strength around your left leg. Strength even perhaps right on your right quads. Place your hand down on the floor. Take a step back with your left foot, downward facing dog. And inhale to plank, top of the push-up. You can drop to your knees. You can do knees, chest, and chin, or you can chat around and just bring yourself, lower yourself down. Inhale. Let's just do a baby cobra. Exhale. We're going to push ourselves back up into a downward facing dog. This time we're going to bring our right foot forward toward our right hand. We're going to drop our left knee onto the floor. We're going into a low lunge. If you like, you can place your right hand and left hand onto your right thigh. Bring yourself up. We're going to bring our arms right in front. And this time I'd like for you to place your left elbow under your right elbow. So we're going to stack it into eagle arms. So can you feel that your right hip and left hip are so squared with each other? And then this way is getting a little bit more stretch. You're feeling a stretch. If your elbows can be at about the same height as your shoulders, that's fine. Breathe here, feel that stretch. Release. Bring your hands behind you, pull it behind you, kind of like interlace your fingers if possible, or you can always grab a towel. Pull it down as if earth is trying to pull you down. Give you a nice stretch along your shoulders, your chest. You don't have to tweak your gaze upward, in fact, looking straight forward. Beautiful. Release, place your hands in front of you. Take a step up with your left foot, forward fold. Feel the difference between the two legs. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale your arms all the way up toward heaven. Exhale, slight back bend. Inhale back to up front and exhale all the way back down to forward fold. Inhale your hands to your shin, nice flat back. Exhale, all the way back down. All right, this time we're going to take a step back with your left foot. Again, you have the option to use a block. The choice. Again, you're giving some time for your left hip flexors, nice and stretched. Check your placement of your right knee. Is the right knee over that right ankle? Keep breathing here. And again, remember, one of our themes with it being Earth Day, can you feel your foot, your right foot in particular, and then even your left, probably the balls of your left foot, grounded, rooted into the ground, into the earth, and wherever your hands are at. So your hand can still be rooted or grounded into a block or whatever props you're using, or onto the mat. We're going to take a step back with your right foot, downward facing dog. And maybe because you've stretched it a little bit more, maybe you sense that your heels are a little bit closer toward the floor. Inhale to plank. You can always drop your knees. You can drop your knees, chest and chin, or chaturanga, slightly lower down. Inhale to baby cobra. Exhale into downward facing dog again. This time, you're going to place your left foot by your left hand. You can always walk it up and drop your right knee down. So we're in that little low lunge. Place both hands on top of that left thigh. Good. So you have options with your feet. I keep getting foot cramps, so I'm kind of actually tucking my toes, but then you can also have it straight. I've been getting a lot of foot cramps lately, so. Feel yourself. Hips are squared. Send your arms in front. This time your right elbow is below, and then your left elbow is above it, so you're going to the eagle arm. And you try to keep the elbows about in the same height of your shoulders. Get that expansion there, stretch. Beautiful. You guys are looking great. Send it out and bring your hands behind you. Interlace those fingers. Pull yourself down. Now, a little bit of mind thing here. Chances are you use the exact same thumb over the other one. Switch it out. So have the opposite thumb on top as you interlace your fingers together. Pull it down. Exhale your hands back down. In front, take a step up with your right foot. Forward fold. Now they should both be kind of stretched the same way. Hands to your shin, nice flat back. Exhale your hands back down to forward fold. All right, we did our sun salutation. One of the things I want to share then is take a step back with your right foot. Have your hands nice and planted, grounded into the earth. Take a step back with your left foot. Downward facing dog. I mentioned that I wanted to share with us some things from Exodus that really spoke to me in terms of, this is the geeky side of me, how we're going to do some of the sequences or asanas poses here. So inhale to plank. We're going to slowly lower ourselves down, really slowly. We're going into crocodile. So in Exodus is when we're in Egypt. Moses is trying to get the Israelites to be free. So we're going to go into crocodile. In this case, we're going to do the crocodile where you're going to release your lower back and everything else. So when you're on your stomach, trying to make sure you're nice and even here, you have some options. You can place your hands in front of you, palms onto the floor. They don't have to be interlaced, but then you put your forehead onto your fingers. That way you can actually breathe instead of having your nose smushed into the earth. Now, if this does not feel good for you, maybe, it tightens your shoulders or whatever, you can always place your hands down by your side and then just maybe kind of like slightly tuck your chin in so that your forehead's onto the mat. But when you're in this position, tops of your feet are on the mat. And then can you completely relax? So we're in crocodile. And I want you to remember back into Exodus, where Moses, who, by the way, kind of a little bit wussed out of it. Even though God asked Moses to go and free his people, he tried to find all these different excuses. So actually, his brother Aaron had to do a lot of it. So a lot of these stories and stuff that happened, actually Aaron was there with his staff. So we're at the Nile River, and of course Pharaoh wanted none of releasing his slaves. But even though Pharaoh's not willing to release, we don't have to be a slave to what might be tightened up in our own body. So can you release by relaxing? In fact, when you're breathing, perhaps you can feel the back, your upper back expand up toward heaven, even though your front of your entire body is connected to the earth. Now this time we're going to go into Sphinx pose. So we're just going to bring our elbows underneath our shoulders. Our forearms still connected onto the earth. Palm of your hands are facing down on the earth. And so this is just giving a little bit of release into our lumbar spine, but you don't want compression. So in compression, if you're feeling a little tightness, like it's being compressed in there, engage your core. So bring your navel to your spine, and that should kind of help release some of that. Trying to get a little bit of back bend, but we're working different areas of it. So of course, we know Egypt with the Sphinx. Of course, back then they didn't have the Sphinx, but hey, good excuse for me to get a Sphinx pose in here, huh? But also to help open up our back, because camel is pretty intense, and I'm slowly getting us prepared for camel pose. Now, the important thing with Sphinx pose is kind of feel where your neck is and shoulders are relative to this pose. So you don't want to tweak and force your neck upward. So I don't know if you remember all the different plagues that happened to Pharaoh and the folks in Egypt. First time around they did, staff turn into the snakes. So we've done plenty of cobra pose, so we didn't need to do that anymore. And then, of course, the Nile River turned into blood. All the fish died, and we're not going to do fish pose in this case. And then you slowly lower yourself back down. I'd like for you to bend your left knee, but when I say bend your left knee, allow it to go to your left side. So it's going at almost like adjacent to you. So if your left knee can kind of go up toward where your left hip is at, your left foot is, the inner side of your left foot is onto the earth. So we're doing frog pose, but we're doing one-sided frog pose. That would be very intense. You can place your hands back onto your fingers that's interlaced underneath your forehead. And a little bit of a hip opener here. Breathe into that area. And then when you're ready, you can always switch out to your right side. So you bring your left knee back in, place it under straight underneath you, and then bring your right foot out. If you like, you can always bring your gaze to one side, whichever feels best for you. And some of the other plays where you had all the flies, gnats, and lice. That was like, it was horrid afterwards. All right, then we're going to bring your right leg back in. I'd like for you to get ready to go into locust pose because we knew when they let the locusts come in. So what you're going to do is, now this time your forehead is onto the floor, extend your arms back behind you, palms facing upward, and you're going to lift your both legs up off the ground. And if this is enough for you, then so be it. Just have your both legs up off the ground, or if you want, you can even lift your both arms up off the ground, even your head. Now, your gaze should still be looking straight down at the floor. Do not look forward. Be very nice and mindful of your cervical spine. Locust pose. Breathe here. And then release back down. You can go back into your crocodile. For those that want to do a full bow pose, you can always bend both knees, grab your ankles, and then kick your feet into your hands and coming up into bow pose. But if you don't want to, you can always just do one at a time. And release. Then placing your hands underneath your shoulders, press yourself back up into your tabletop. All looking good. And this time you're going to bring your left knee right behind your left wrist. So you're going into a pigeon pose. So again, you can walk your hands up a little bit, like one hand foot forward, and then bring your right knee back a little bit as you go into your pigeon pose. So check to see if your hips are squared. You can always place something underneath your left hip if you want. Want a little bit of a stretch? An option that you have is you can always bend that right knee, grab onto your right foot or ankle with your right hand, get a little bit of a stretch. And what you notice when you do that is, again, you're getting a slight little back bend. So you can feel what part of this pose are you grounded with the earth. Because chances are there may be the left hips off of the ground. But it's a great way to sense how its adjacent joints are connected and supporting. Right, you're going to tuck your right toe, lift that right knee up off the ground. Have your hands nice and grounded again. Just check to see if your index fingers are straight forward, thumbs are spread out wide, and then you're going to bring yourself back up into your downward facing dog. You're going to walk your dog a little bit. And then this time you're going to go into your pigeon on the other side. So your right knee is going to come up to right behind your right wrist. And then you drop your left knee down gently. And then again, position yourself so that your hips are even. You can choose to put a block or a blanket or something underneath your right hip if you want. I tend to just allow gravity to kind of pull it down, but don't force anything. It's really important not to force anything. Again, feel the connection. Perhaps you can feel the outer side of your right foot contacting the earth, the right shin bone on the earth, both hands and palms grounded into the earth, your left entire foot, the top of the left foot, I should say, and all along to the left knee, make nice and rooted into the ground as well. And this time, if you like, you have the option, you can always lift that, bend that left knee and reach back to get a little bit more of a back bend. Also, it stretches that left quad. So a lot of times with back bends, there's a lot of different things that limit us. And sometimes it's the other muscles, not just the back. So we were focusing on the upper back, thoracic, lumbar, but also the quads, pelvis, shoulders, chest. Release. This time we're going to tuck our left toe, lift that left knee up. Make sure both hands are nice, still remain grounded as you lift your right foot behind you into that downward facing dog. We're going to drop our knees to the ground. We're going to cross our ankles, and we're going to get seated because we're going to go into a bridge pose. We're going to try to release our upper back. So with bridge pose, it's really important for you not to turn your gaze to the side. Your gaze is going to be upward, heavenly. Your knees are bent. Your soles of feet are on the ground. Your hands are down by your side. And I'd like for you to now feel your lower back make contact to the floor. And slowly lift your hips up off the ground. So going into a bridge pose. Stay here a couple breaths. And then when you slowly release, just feel each vertebrae one at a time, making contact to the earth. And if you like, you can always bend at your elbows and have your arms down by the side. Your fingertips are pointing up toward heaven, and do the exact same thing. You do another bridge pose of this. So again, make the lower back, lumbar make contact to the earth, and then lift your hips up. What this does is, with you have your hands bent at the elbow, keeping your shoulders broad, your collarbones broad, and then hopefully that also helps you be mindful of the fact, don't put so much stress into your head, your neck area. And then slowly come back down. We're going to cross your ankles, your right knee bent so that your right ankle's on top of your left thigh. even though we did our pigeon beforehand, we're going to lift our left knee up, our left leg up, getting a little stretch. If you want, you can actually place your hands between so that you do a little bit of a bind and release your fingers behind your left thigh. Or you can always just kind of hold your left hand against your left leg and then maybe use your right hand and kind of gently press that right leg away from you. Just getting a little bit more stretch along your hips. Dropping your left foot all the way down to the floor. Or switch out, right foot makes contact to the ground, and then bend your left knee, bring your left ankle in on top of your right thigh, right above the knee, and then lift the right foot up. So we know on Earth, we have all these different birds that fly in the sky. So again, you have the option, you can either interlace your fingers behind your right thigh, or you can place your right hand on top or next to your thigh and use your left hand to kind of press gently the left leg away from you. So you can feel what provides a little bit more of a stretch. Continue to monitor your breath. Feel the breath provide that expansion within your own body. And you feel what part of your body is still rooted and grounded onto the earth. Perhaps it's your sacrum. We're going to drop your right foot. Let the right foot make contact to the earth. Release your left leg. Left foot now, make contact to the ground. And then we're going to bring your knees to your chest, hug it in. If you like, you can even lift your chin up and rock a little bit side to side to allow a little bit of a release there. Release your head back down. And up. All right. So as we sit up, you can roll over to your right side and push yourself up into a comfortable seated position because we're going to get ready for our camel. So this is where you might want to have a block or 2 blocks next to you. And then because you're going to be kneeling, if it feels a little bit more comfortable, place blankets or something like that underneath your knees, feel free to do that as well. I already have actually 3 yoga mats on my ground, so I don't need that because mine's already padded, but it's one of those things where from a camel standpoint. So let me walk you through this. This is where so camel is basically when we're going to do our back bend. So when you're kneeling, your knees are at hip width apart. Your feet are straight back behind you. And I'd like for you to place your hands as if you're wearing one of those old-fashioned jean pockets, that have pockets in it. Pretend you're putting your fingers down in the pocket, so your palms against your on your gluteus maximus. Okay, on your butt cheeks, you guys. So place that there, shoulder blade, elbows toward each other. And I'd like for you to, again, sense that you're not getting compression in your lower back. So if you do feel like there's compression, I want you to imagine yourself pressing down, pushing down so that you're expanding a little bit lower back. Does that make sense? Can you feel that? And then perhaps you kind of push forward of your hips as you lean back. You're kind of going back. Now, what we're going to do for camel, and we're going to do this one at a time. I personally, again, because I always get foot cramps, but also it allows me a little more accessibility to the earth, I like to tuck my toes. So when I do this, you may choose to put one hand, your right hand down, either grab onto your right heel, or this is why a block is really good. Other option is you can even have a whole chair behind you and just slowly use that. Like you might have your hand on something. So you can place a block here, lean back, just one side. If you like, you lift your left arm up. Do a little bit of the back bend. And then when you're ready, you can always go into a child's pose. I like to consider it as your seed, plant-bearing seed for fruit. And when you do go into your child's pose after something like that, like, oh, wow, what a difference. So again, keep breathing. So when you're breathing into your fully, you can feel your belly rising, which is pressing up against your thighs. It's giving that nice expansion in your lower back, which especially after an intense camel pose is like, oh yeah. Okay, we're gonna come up and do the opposite side. So if you were beforehand doing the right side, you're gonna do the left side. So again, place your hands into those invisible pockets. You may choose to bring your left hand down. You'll lift your right arm up. Or if you have a whole camel practice, you can do both. But again, go to what your body can do, and you don't need to go into full camel at all. And when your body's telling you to come out, and you know to go into your child's pose. And then if you like, you can go into your child's pose. And if you are in your child's pose, and again, if you've been getting like little foot cramps, you can always roll up a towel, place it underneath your ankles perhaps, or if you feel like it's better, you can actually put some blankets between where your thighs and your calves are, especially if your knees are a little on the tight side. That actually makes it more accessible. The other thing is that it might be a little bit more restorative having your forehead make contact with something. If it's not able to make contact to the earth, you can bring the earth up to you, so you can place a block or a blanket or a pillow or something like that. And feel what your shoulders speaking to you. So you can always bring your elbows to the width of your mat. You can always place your palms of your hands toward each other and lift your hands up in prayer pose, having your elbows still on the ground and having it up toward heaven. It's now we place our hands, again, both planted onto the earth. Going back into our tabletop. This time, walk your hands one handprint above, tucking your toes back into downward facing dog. You might feel a lot more looser there, especially since we did a lot of stretching, a lot of compression with our back bends. Bring your left foot up toward our left hand. Dropping your right knee onto the floor. Come back up with your hands both on top of your left thighs into that low lunge again. Should feel pretty easy. Both arms up toward heaven, the expanse. Exhale your hands to heart center. This time you're going to bring your right elbow to the outside of your left thigh, so kind of into a spinal twist. Again, do you feel your left foot grounded into the earth? Perhaps your right toe, the ball of your right foot, staying grounded in your knee. Inhale back to center. Exhale your hands down to the floor. Straighten your left knee. You may want to walk your hands back, or you can always use a block. Perhaps bring your forehead down toward your shin. And you keep your hips even. So chances are your right hip is a little bit further back than your left hip. You slightly bring your right hip forward, left hip's going back so they're squared with each other. Bend your left knee. Place your hands back down, nice and rooted. We're going to take a step back into a downward facing dog again. Now we're going to go into the right side, but if you like, you can do a chaturanga if you want to do a little vinyasa flow in between. So you can do into plank, knees, chest, and chin. And then basically we're going to have it so that our right foot's forward into your, into that low lunge. So right knee forward, you're going to drop that left knee down. Placing both hands onto your right thigh. Beautiful. Inhale your arms all the way up toward heaven, palms together, back down in front of your heart for prayer pose. This time, again, feel the sensation of your right foot nice and rooted into the ground. Your left ball to your feet and the left knee is nice and rooted as well. And then inhale here, and as you exhale, bring your left elbow to the outside of your right thigh. You're going to that nice little prayer twist, spinal twist. Continue breathing. Inhale back to center. Bring your hands back down. Straighten your right knee. You like you can fold forward. Place your forehead onto your shin or your knees or anything close to it. Again, the same thing. Can you sense where your hips are relative to it? So again, right hip comes a little bit, try to bring it a little bit further back behind you, left hip a little bit forward so that they can be even with each other. And when you're doing that, you're probably feeling a major stretch along your hamstring. And then your knees, your hands rooted into the ground. Take a step back, your right foot, downward facing dog. Bend your knees. And then we're going to cross your ankles. We're going to get into a position so that we can get into our happy baby, since lastly, of course, is when God made us in his likeness and image. So go onto your back, be very mindful. So it's always nice to go down on the side and then roll over. So let's just hug your right knee toward your chest, interlace your fingers to your chest when removing pose. Your left knee can still be bent, completely fine, and your left foot grounded. Extend your left leg straight. You can feel a little bit more of a stretch. Bend your left knee, hug your left knee to your chest. You can just release your right foot. Let the right foot make contact to the earth. Hug the left knee even closer when removing pose. On this side, and straighten your right leg. Feel the stretch along the right leg, so you can always press that heel away from you, your right heel. And then your right knee so that you can hug your knees to your chest. Place your hands on your knees and draw big circles with your knees. And draw in the opposite direction. and show the soles of your feet up toward sky, the expanse. And then if you want, you can actually grab onto the outer feet or even in between your toes for happy baby. Not only are we children of God, God created us in his image, male and female. So if you like, you can feel that lower back, make contact with the floor. It might feel delicious for you, especially with all of those back bends that we did. This time we're gonna get ready into our final resting pose. Day 7, Shavasana, so our day of rest. So if you like, you can place your right heel to the right corner of your mat, or if you want, you can go into legs up the wall and physically go to the wall, or you can place a bolster or something like that underneath your knees, or you can just place your left heel to the left corner of your mat. You can feel the heels grounded into the earth. Place your hands down by your side. Bring those shoulder blades down behind you. So tuck those angel wings underneath so that your shoulder blades can rotate, have an external rotation with your palms facing upward toward heaven to receive all that God has so wonderfully prepared for us. Have your eyes closed. I'd like for you to feel that release. Just keep breathing here. And although we had celebrated Earth Day, being rooted and grounded into the earth during this practice, we know that we can be rooted and grounded in love through Jesus Christ. Continue breathing here, relaxing. It's something for you to consider because as at the beginning of this class, we talked about Genesis, but think of this, that he would grant you, according to the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with might through his spirit in your inner beings, that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend this so much then, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. Think of the expanse, the heavens and the earth that God created, how wide and long, high and deep, the depth of the water, the seas, the lands that gathered underneath the expanse, how wide that was, how long. Create the sun and the moon and the stars, the birds, all the living creatures, livestock, everything. God's desire is for us to be with him. And when we failed, he delivered us Christ so that we can be with him. And from that very beginning, when the Spirit of God was hovering over that face of the waters, this place that He created, this earth for us, until that time we can be again with Him. You may want to slowly bring your body and awareness back into this world, wiggling your fingers and your toes, rotating your ankles and your wrists. Going the opposite direction. You may want to inhale your arms over your head and bring your toes and pointing away from you. Just feel the length of what you can do. That's how much God loves you, from your toes all the way up to your fingertips, above your head. And as you exhale, you may want to bend your knees and hug your knees to your chest. And when you're ready, you may want to roll over to your right side and just have your head just resting on top of your lower arm. And when you're ready, you may want to use your upper arm to press yourself up into a nice, comfortable seated position with your eyes remaining closed. If you like, you can place your hands on top of your thighs with your palms facing upward. And having the thumb and index finger touching each other, I call it the eternal circle. As we inhale through our nose, let's exhale our breath with the open mouth breath. Full inhale here. Complete exhale. Deep inhale here. Full exhale. Floating your hands together, palm touching palm, thumb resting right above your heart. Tucking your chin down toward your heart. May this practice allow you to know just how much God loves you. Created this earth for us through Genesis, delivered us, freed us, bring all these different plagues, all the different signs. More importantly, wanting us to know how much that we can be rooted and grounded in love. That is how much God loves us. Thank you for coming. Namaste.